a guy baby.
A girl baby?
Yeah.
For who?
For you.
Who's gonna have a baby?
You.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Thanks for checking out Melon and Mommy Moves again. And in this episode, I will wrap up the very emotional NICU chronicles that we experienced for the first 38 days of Major's life, and then we can move on to more happier moments. And you guys can like meet my kids and see how my family is and where we live and so on. So when I ended the last video, I stated that the first worst day ever in the NICU was when Major got off his machine but then had to go back on it. He was back on that machine, the CPAP machine, for 5 days, and then he took it off, and of course, or he didn't take it off, the doctor took it off. And of course we were really nervous because we had got so excited the first time and then got our heart broke after being so excited. So after 5 days, the machine was removed, and I was like on pins and needles, watching his numbers, asking for updates and so on. About 10 days passed and he hadn't needed the machine or any additional help. So we were excited and we were moving on to bottle feeding. Now, when a preemie is born, people think, which is like an old myth or an old wives' tale, that if the baby is at least 5 pounds, they can go home. That is not the case. In order to leave the NICU, you must be able to breathe on your own. You must be able to control your own body temperature on your own, and you must be able to eat on your own. So he was able to breathe on his own, coming directly out the womb, but needed a little assistance with the CPAP machine. So we jumped that hurdle and got over it. Shortly after that, he was able to maintain his own body temperature, so he didn't need to be in the incubator, which is the plastic clear box that covers the entire bed. So he maintained his own body temperature, and what they call it is being on room air. So whatever the temperature is in the room is what the temperature that they can maintain. So we got over that second hurdle. The last and the most exhausting hurdle was bottle feeding. Before bottle feeding, he had a feeding tube that would either up his nose and down his throat, or in his mouth and down his throat, and they would essentially take a syringe and squeeze my breast milk through the feeding tube, and it would go immediately to his belly. So he ate every 3 hours. Most of the feedings I did myself because I was there. If I wasn't there, then the nurses would do it. But my thing was that I was determined to be there for most of the feedings because I wanted to learn how to feed him properly. So every day he would increase. I think he started off with 50 mLs. He would drink 5, and then he would drink 8, and sometimes he would drink 13, and then he would drink 20, and then he would go back to 13. So it was kind of an up and down emotional roller coaster. So with that, every day was a struggle trying to get him to learn how to do it. He had the sucking mechanism down, but sometimes he would forget to breathe, which would essentially cause his stats to drop. And anytime that happens too many times, then you have to stop the feeding, and they just put the rest down the tube because it puts him under too much stress. So every day I would be texting my mom, and Jared would be there, or I would text him if he was at work. He'd be like, Major ate this much, he ate this much, babe, and we would just be so excited. And then the second worst day of the NICU came. I had fed Major and gave him a bed bath and put him to sleep before I left for the night. And I always called when I got home before I went to bed to make sure that he was doing okay, and then I would call again the next morning to see how he did overnight. When I called before I went to bed, he was fine and sleeping, and his numbers were great. The next morning I called and spoke to the nurse. She advised that his last couple diapers, he had bloody stool. and my heart dropped. I'm like, what? We were just doing so good. Like, we can't go back to square one. We're on our way out the door. We're on the last step. And because he had bloody stool, he could not eat until they figured out why. And not being able to eat was a huge crush to us because that was the last step for us to go home. And we couldn't figure out why he would have blood in his stool. So first they thought maybe he had a cut or something in his rectum. That wasn't the case. They thought he had NEC, which is one of the worst disease that often preemies get. And it can lead to serious surgery, longer hospital stays. It's just something, once I Googled it, I knew I shouldn't have Googled it. Or it could have been a milk intolerance, which means he had an allergic reaction to the fortifier, which is like extra calories that they add to my breast milk. And they add extra calories to formula or breast milk for preemies because they need that extra weight if they are smaller. Thank goodness they were able to send the stool to the lab. This took 48 hours, unfortunately, so that was 48 hours of no eating. He just had an IV that they had to put back in. He was allergic to the type of fortifier that they were putting in. By this time, I'm pissed. And because this wasn't something that my son calls on his own or his body had failed him, this was something that you guys said that he needed. And this is why he has bloody stool. So I was pissed. And this is the solution, but the solution that he gave, I wasn't going for it. I was sick of being there. I wanted my baby to be okay, and I wanted him to be home. So I declined for him to have extra calories, given he was already a big baby. At this point, he was over 6 pounds, and we had been in the NICU for a month. When I got to the hospital that day, he was able to resume bottle feeding, and I don't know what happened over that 48 hours. My baby was fed up and he was hungry. The IV was not doing it. When we gave him that bottle, he drank the whole thing. He did not stop. He did not stop breathing. He didn't forget to breathe. His numbers were excellent. And every feeding after that, for the next 48 hours, he drank the whole bottle. So I was like ecstatic. This is what I have been waiting on. And when I prayed that night, I said, God, I need my baby to be home before Halloween. And I prayed like I did every night, and he kept drinking all of his bottles. When a doctor called me, which they did at least once a day to give me an update, he was saying how good he was doing and that they were going to take the feeding tube out. And I was ecstatic because that was the last step before he could get approval to come home. We could see all of his face with no tubes or tape or anything. He was drinking all of his bottle, and I said, okay, enough is enough. He's been drinking all his bottles. When can he come home? And this was on a Friday. It said the earliest that he can come home, as long as there are no complications or issues, would be Wednesday. Wednesday was October 28th, which was right before Halloween, like I had prayed. I didn't share the news with anyone really, except for obviously his dad. I told my cousins because I happened to be on the phone with them when a doctor called, and I told my mom. I didn't share the news with anybody because I didn't want to get everybody excited, and then I have to explain that something happened and he can't come home. And I just didn't want to deal with all of the emotions of having to explain it to everybody. When I was dealing with enough my own emotions. So from Friday to Wednesday, I was on edge because I knew that if anything happened, his time would be extended. So we didn't have any issues on Saturday, Sunday, Monday. They told me to bring the car seat in. When I carried that car seat in, I almost was basically running through the hospital because I had mentioned in my prior videos that I always would see moms leaving the hospital with their babies in the car seat, and I would be emotional and cry in my car the whole way home because I wanted my baby to be in his car seat and I wanted to put him in the car and take him home. And I felt like finally I was so close to that. We were so close to that. So took the car seat in that Monday night. Tuesday, he was circumcised. They wait until the day before they go home to do that. He did not cry at all. Like, how do you get circumcised and do not like drop a tear? It's crazy. But I figured he thought I've been through enough. Like, I'm not about to cry now. So Tuesday when I left, I knew that as long as there were no issues overnight, that I could pick my baby up in the morning. And he passed his car seat test. In the morning, Wednesday morning, I called and it was like everything was smooth. He passed his test. There were no alarms. So we're scheduled to release him at noon. We just have to wait until the doctor does his rounds. And you probably hear my baby crying in the background. He's in the room with his dad. So this is mommy life. So I woke up extra early. I drove to the hospital. The whole way I'm just praying, thank you God, let me just get my baby home. I can't wait. Got there, we waited for the doctors to do their rounds. The doctor came in and examined them and he was good. And he asked me, are you ready to take your baby home? And I said, oh my God, it's been 38 days, 12 hours, and 2 minutes. And we packed up our stuff, put our baby in his car seat, and we were discharged. And it was a scary, emotional, happy day. Like, I had all of these emotions. I was mortified because for 38 days I had machines to tell me what's going on. But when we got home, there were no machines. But I was super excited that my baby was home and I could see him 24/7, and his sister could see him for the first time in 38 days. And she was amazing. The whole 38 days she would be sad because she didn't want to leave me, that she wanted to see her brother, and for him to be home. So we didn't tell her, of course, because that was a conversation that if he didn't get to come home, I didn't want to have to go back and tell her that he couldn't come home. So she was with her, with family, and I went to get her after we came home, and we put Major in his seat. And when she came in, I told her, run to your room and get me your charger. And she was running, and he was sitting in his chair in her room, and she couldn't stop smiling. Say hi to your brother.
Major. Major.
He's sleeping.
Mom, he put the middle finger up.
Are you surprised? Are you happy? So that was an amazing day. The first night I was mortified because all of the trauma that I had went through. I was scared that he would stop breathing and I wouldn't know because he doesn't have the machine. I was scared that he wouldn't wake up or that he would be crying and I couldn't hear him even though he was next to me. I literally would not sleep until it was daylight. For some reason, I felt comfortable with it being daylight. But at night, I would just sit up and watch him. Every move he made, I would watch his chest go up and down as I still do today, and he's almost 7 months. But I feel like him being almost 7 months, we are in our groove and we are surviving even though we had a traumatic start. And I just thank God every day for allowing me to get through that trauma, even though I deal with it daily. But I really just wanted to share my story because someone else is going through this or will go through this and they won't know what to do or how to handle it, or they'll be afraid to share their feelings. And no one should ever feel like that. So if you are a NICU mom, you are a NICU mom for life. The trauma does not go away and your story needs to be told, and I'm glad that I shared mine. So as I said, I wanted to wrap up the NICU stuff. Wanted to get it out the way because it was very emotional for me, and I'm glad that I got through it. But definitely stay tuned for Melanin Mommy Moves, where I will share my family with the world, and you'll see how we live and how my kids are, and how I am as a mommy of 2 that are 9 years apart. Lord help me. But thanks for staying tuned with me. Thanks for hanging in with me, and stay tuned for new videos. Peace.